Good morning. So welcome. Today we're going to talk a little bit about your microbiome, and I want to just discuss real quick a couple of different things. You see them up on the screen. I'm Connie Lucas, and I'm a certified health coach, and I'm going to have with me today Anne Moreau. And Anne is an RN and nutritionist who is an absolute expert on the microbiome and gut health. Everything I've learned from Anne. So we thought we'd get together today and talk a little bit about some of the things that most people at some point have affect them, from constipation to diarrhea to gas, bloating after eating. You know, a lot of us think I'm eating really healthy food. Why am I getting so bloated after I eat? Abdominal cramping discomfort, upper stomach problems like acid reflux and indigestion. You know, these are very typical common issues, but sometimes people don't even realize that they're like, I eat really healthy foods, I exercise, I'm doing all the right things, and I still am carrying all this weight in my belly. And can you come in with me now and let's talk a little bit about what is going on when that is happening and the two different things that are happening. And then we'll get a little bit into what you can do about this. So hang with us through this. And if it gets a little sciencey here or there, it's just so that you have a very clear understanding of what's going on in your body. But we will ultimately get to the point of what you can do about this, because this is absolutely within your control. It's simple. It may not be easy, but hang with us and come on in, Anne. Let's talk about this.
Sure. Well, I want to first talk about that. What you just listed, Connie, I'm talking one of these symptoms, not all of them. Some people think, oh, I've got to have all these symptoms. No, you don't have to have all these symptoms. If you have one of these symptoms, it's an indication that your microbiome is probably out of balance. And for a lot of people, and it's in a lot of cases, when I talk to men and I'm doing some work with them, they have gas and bloating all their life and they sort of think it's normal. And we've normalized it. I've been a nurse for over 45 years. I've heard physicians normalize constipation. I've heard them say it's okay to go to the bathroom once a week. It's not okay. I'm just here to tell you we have to eliminate those toxins every single day. We have to remember that. And that when we're bloated, when we have the middle abdominal weight stuff going on because we are bloated, or maybe it's insulin resistance and we're not losing that middle abdominal weight. Either one of those can be connected to the microbiome being out of balance. And we can talk about insulin resistance another time. For today, we're going to focus on what is going on in the GI tract. So I'm going to go ahead and show you a visual. And I think it's really important to understand cell membranes and to understand visually what goes on in the intestinal lining. First off, when we talk about cells, you know that we are composed of trillions of cells and that each of the cells have a cell membrane. That cell membrane is composed of lots of fats. They're called short chain fatty acids. Those short chain fatty acids are important because they keep that cell membrane really kind of movable and fluid. You want it to be like bouncy, like a balloon when you tap on it. It bounces back. But when we get a cell membrane that doesn't get the right amount of fats, because either diet or because of what we've been putting in our bodies, these cell membranes over time can get stiff and rigid, as in insulin resistance, or if we're not getting the right kinds of fat. Sugar can make that wall stiff. The wrong kinds of fat can make that cell wall stiff. Taking cholesterol medications, by the way, is not your friend, because cholesterol medication will stop you from absorbing cholesterol. And cholesterol, as you can see, looking at this visual, you can see all these little fatty yellow membranes all around the cell. And this is one cell. Think of your body having trillions of cells, and that these cell membranes are lined with this lipid layer and cholesterol, as well as your brain. So you need cholesterol, and statins prevent you from absorbing the very thing that your body needs in order to be well, in order for you to absorb the nutrients you need. It's also important for your hormones. So it plays a huge role in overall health. So let's look at the GI tract. And I'm not going to go through all of this with you. I just wanted to show you that These are your metabolic organs. Your metabolic organs work together. And as you look at this, you see that there's the GI tract. We can see the small intestine, the large colon. Over here, the blue organ is your pancreas. This is your liver and your gallbladder. Quite frequently, I meet with my clients and we're talking, and they tell me, "Oh, I don't have any issues. My intestinal tract's fine. I don't have any of those things," but their gallbladder is gone. And why has the gallbladder been removed? Because these organs of metabolism here have all been stressed out for a while for this organ to get diseased and for it to have to be removed. So we need to understand that when one organ is out of balance, it will impact the pancreas. If the pancreas is overwhelmed because of the sugar, it will impact the liver, the gallbladder. These organs of metabolism work together. And I just want to point something out over here because you can see here I have a little arrow that points to the small intestine. We've got the GI tract, we have the large colon over here, and the small intestines. In each of these areas, the pH is a little different. pH is higher up here. It's more alkaline in here and alkaline in the large colon. And the bacteria is different in each of these areas. The bacteria in the small colon is bacteria that nourishes our body. It helps to break down food, detoxify. It has multiple bacteria has a lot of multiple roles in our body. However, at times when we're constipated, or even if we've had a lot of sugar and we're fermenting food and the wrong kind of bacteria gets in here, or this bacteria, because you're not eliminating every day, might even back up into this area here. And when it does, this is waste bacteria in the large colon, and that waste bacteria does not belong in the small intestine. And that can cause a condition called SIBO, small intestinal bacteria overgrowth. So your bacteria now is totally out of balance. You're going to end up with a lot of like fermentation, gas, bloating, discomfort, and that's what happens here. And again, this organ is stressed out, so will the rest of these organs be stressed out. They work together. Any comments?
I know, I love that because I really think we don't have a good way of seeing that, and we think in terms of look at the doctors. You go to a GI specialist, you go to a cardiovascular, you go to somebody else, an endocrinologist. We break it into these specialties instead of understanding that it all works together and there's a balance together. So thank you for that, Anne.
Yeah, and I want to talk about the microbiome because that's a word that a lot of people are hearing today, but they may not necessarily know what that is. And it's important to understand that the microbiome, when we talk about the microbiome, it's your internal ecology. I like to compare it to a garden or, to your environmental ecology. If you think of your ecology outside, if you're going to grow a plant, for example, you need sunlight, you need rain, you need red worms in the soil, you need bacteria. When you compost, you've got lots of bacteria in the compost, and you put that in your soil and you nourish that plant, and that plant grows and it's beautiful and it's green. Now you've got flowers, and you need your bees to pollinate to get your fruit or vegetable. That's a balanced ecology outside. Inside our body, we need to have a balanced ecology. And when those microorganisms are out of balance, they will create all kinds of issues. In addition to overall health, we're also talking mental health. And many people don't make the connection that the GI tract and emotions, whether it be depression, ADHD, Parkinson's, whatever it is, it's connected to the brain directly. So, what contributes to that damage are our food choices. And for many, many people, they don't realize that our food choices today, more than anything, are governed by the food industry. The food industry puts a lot of sugar in food because it is tasty and we love it and we want to buy it. I mean, I went shopping for my mom about 4 months ago. She wanted cream style corn. I looked at the cream style corn. Never would I have guessed there was 18 grams of added sugar in cream style corn. Now, we're supposed to have no more, as women, no more than 24 grams of sugar a day. If you're having one serving of cream style corn and you've had 18 grams in that one meal, imagine how much sugar you're putting in your body without knowing it. So that's one of the problems. And of course, that contributes to bacteria overgrowth because bacteria, yeast loves sugar, right? And some of the bacteria, like there are a couple of them, and I'm not going to get into the names, but that really love sugar and it makes them proliferate and grow. We get this overload of viruses and parasites as a result. Caffeine can also contribute to throwing the alkaline acid base balance off in the gut. And when you do that, you can also impact the gut. Chronic stress, we absolutely know that when you raise your cortisol levels up because of chronic stress, that will harm the GI tract and throw things out of balance when it comes to the general bacteria throughout the body. Alcohol consumption will also create an imbalance. Antibiotics, we talk a lot about antibiotics, and most people know that antibiotics will throw that balance off. NSAIDs are your Motrin, ibuprofen, aspirin. Those things will damage the lining of the GI tract. When I was working at the hospital as a nurse, when people would take any of these NSAIDs, I always said to them, be sure to eat food with them. Why? Because we know they damage the lining of the gut. And I'm going to show you in a minute why that's important because it contributes to what we call leaky wall. So that imbalance will absolutely damage the gut, and these are the contributing factors. This term GALT is something that not many people are familiar with. Have you ever heard of this term, Connie, before?
I have, but I really believe that most people have not. And this conversation, I just want to make sure that everybody realizes, although you may be feeling like, oh, this is a lot being thrown at me, stick with us through this because in just a couple more slides, we're really going to get into the idea of bringing this down to what exactly you can do and you have control over. But this is an important piece to understand, right, Anne?
Truly important when it comes to your immune system because a lot of people know that we've got that T and B cells play a role in your immune system, and we have lymph nodes throughout the body, and that's lymphoid tissue and that's protective. We know that under the breastbone there is lymphoid tissue there as well in the thymus. We have some in the bone marrow, but by far the largest amount of lymphoid tissue lies in the gastrointestinal mucosa. So these T and B cells, again, regulate your immune system. So let's see this visual. This really, really helps people understand. So this is a view of the small intestine. And what we see inside of the intestinal lining is lots of bugs, right? You can see all the bugs, parasites that are in there. I mean, this intestinal lining is it's our barrier. It's supposed to protect us from everything we put in our mouths all our lives. So you can well imagine that this intestinal tract gets exposed to a lot over time. As you're looking here, you also see food here. This is the IgA is about the food particles. And so as we're, exposed to life and food and medications and antibiotics and pesticides and all the things that will contribute to damaging this lining, and it's multiple things, we start to have these little tiny breaks that you can see here. And these little tiny breaks allow food and bacteria through the wall. And as that enters here, you can see the T and B cells, they have a job to do. Their job is to grab a hold of the food that's leaking through, any bugs that are leaking through, and get rid of it and send it to the macrophages to be gobbled up like little Pac-Man. However, when this has been going on for a period of time, and there's a leaky wall here, and that leaky wall continues to get a little bit bigger, what happens is that as the food continues to leak out, these T and B cells start to get confused. They are not doing their job well any longer. They're tired. And what happens is that food and bacteria is then allowed to leak through into the blood. And I like to show this visual because it clearly shows this leaky, inflamed wall. We now have a break. Bacteria and food enter the blood. And that'll cause a whole slew of problems that we'll talk more about. I want to talk a little bit about as food, let's talk gluten and dairy because those are the biggest culprits right now that we're seeing. that gluten, which is heavily sprayed with glyphosate, and it's heavily processed, that what happens is that when it leaks through, your T and B cells are going to clean it up initially, but over time, as it continues to leak, it won't do the job. And if you keep eating that very food that has leaked through and entered the blood, your immune system has now identified that food as bad for you. So it's tricked into thinking that it's something that's very harmful. Maybe it's some of the bacteria that you leaked out. Maybe it's the protein from the gluten, or maybe it's a dairy molecule. For those people who have, for example, Hashimoto's thyroiditis, what happens is in Hashimoto's is that you eat gluten, and gluten molecularly looks a lot like your thyroid. So every time you eat gluten, your thyroid is going to get damaged because your body is trying to destroy that. It's producing an inflammation, and it will damage that. So you get this cytokine storm and lots of damage. And that's why we eliminate some of these foods from people, so that they can allow this intestinal tract to heal and repair. If you keep ingesting the food and you take things to repair, then you're not going to repair. You'll start to repair, you'll take the food in, you'll damage, and you get into this vicious cycle. So it's so important that you repair what's been damaged if you want to heal and get things better. And one more thing about this slide. You see these M cells, these are mast cells. And sometimes, I talk to people who have mast cell activation. What mast cells do is they trigger the histamine response. So if you have allergies, know that it can all stem from the GI tract. So let's look at a closer view of the intestinal lining. And I like to show these two because you can see here that if you look at one see, this is the cell membrane of, the intestinal tract. Oh, and I forgot to tell you that the intestinal tract only has one cell membrane, where skin has 7 layers. There's only one layer in the intestinal tract. So this one cell gets damaged pretty easily, pretty quickly. So as we look at this healthy part of the gut, we see that the intestinal lining is, or the cells are nice and intact, the villi are intact. We can see there's a nice mucus layer. This is very protective of the intestinal lining. And then above that, you can see that there's a lot of different variety of bacteria. So a variety of bacteria is going to be very, very important to protect the mucosa. And a fiber-rich diet is going to feed those bacteria and keep things healthy. Now, if you look on the right-hand side, we see not much fiber in the diet. We see that there's a lot of these little pink guys. There's not a whole lot of a blend of bacteria here. These little pink guys are mucus degrading microbiota, and they're destroying this mucus layer. As that mucus layer is destroyed, and remember, these cell membranes, they might be stiff and rigid from insulin resistance, that maybe they don't have the right kinds of fat, and they're damaged more easily. And that mucosa, which is protective, is no longer there to protect. So now we've got an eroded barrier dysfunction. And that's how that leaky wall develops over time. So that leaky gut results in this inflammatory response. So every time you eat the foods that might have leaked out, you're going to end up having that response. And you can damage the intestinal lining. And by the way, I mean, I had like multiple scopes 17 years ago, and they could not see any damage, because remember that these are microscopic breaks. They cannot be seen through normal testing. The T and B cells now are confused. The B cells are attacking your own tissue and may trigger the autoimmune responses that we often will see in food sensitivities. So what do you want to do here? You want to remove the offending foods and toxins. You want to do that for about 3 weeks while you clean out your diet and you let the intestine heal and repair itself. And once that damaged intestinal lining is repaired and you've brought the balance back, that bacteria balance back, and you replaced, if you need to, you replace the enzymes that maybe are missing. Some people have enzymes missing. Sometimes it's their hydrochloric acid isn't what it should be. So there's a lot of, good reasons, or a lot of things that you need to kind of look at. But I find most people, if they remove, repair, restore, that they will find that they will start to feel better. Only when I see people not getting better do we go the step further to see, are they missing enzymes, and maybe they do need some hydrochloric acid.
And can we go back to remove?
Sure.
So I want to talk a little bit about this for just 1 second, because again, we have this tendency. First of all, there's things, there's different ways of, we've got to figure out what to remove. So let's talk a little bit about the fact that there are some culprits. You talked about dairy. We know dairy, sugar, and gluten are some biggies that are pretty automatic for many. But also, you have a lot of people who are saying, I eat a very, very healthy diet. I eat almonds and avocados, and I have healthy fats and good proteins, and I'm eating this really, really varied, great diet, but I'm still having this issue and this overgrowth issues. So they go in, one way could be food testing. And that can sometimes give you an idea, but it may not tell you everything. Can you talk a little bit about ideas of how somebody can figure out what to remove from their diet and how to go about that?
Well, I often will tell people that you can go for a test, and the test will tell you what you're leaking through the wall. And it's usually all the food that you're eating every day. So if you're eating avocados every day, I meet with parents who have had kids who've had gut issues. And so they see the docs, and the docs will like take them off all this food that they see on the test, and they change all their food. And now they start to eat all these foods for months, and then they go back, and now the test is done, and all the foods that the new foods that they brought in are now in the test, and they're leaking those out, and they kind of go, well, I eliminated all those, now I have to eliminate more. And I think what's important to understand here is that if the GI tract gets damaged, and if it's only been a short amount of time that you've been leaking through that wall, you can remove those foods for 3 to 4 weeks, heal the wall, and bring those foods back in. But the foods that you bring back in should not be eaten every day again. Once you've leaked through that wall once, you're going to be somebody that's going to be more likely to leak. So doing what I call a 4-day rotation is very important. And what I mean by that is, say that you're having almonds and maybe avocados on Monday, and maybe you had some chicken. Maybe you want to wait till Friday before you have those foods again, so that you're waiting a 4-day period, so that if you're not eating them every day, and your body doesn't start to recognize them again and start to trigger an inflammatory response. In some cases, I have people who've had sensitivities to foods. For example, I'm talking about myself. For 25 years, I was leaking out of my gut dairy. It was causing a problem, and I didn't know it. So my immune system has a really good memory. So when I have dairy, it remembers, and it triggers for me an inflammatory response. Now, it's been 17 years. I can do dairy once in a while now and be okay. But if I do it 2 or 3 days in a row, by day 3, every joint in my body hurts. So its memory is there, and it will trigger an inflammatory response for me as well. Is that pretty?
That's it. And that is a really, really big piece. That is a piece that I think we don't understand, because we're trying to do the right things. We're trying to eat the right foods. We take them out, we put them back, and we don't understand that everybody hears the terms. I think it's pretty common to hear leaky gut. It's pretty common to hear cytokine storm. We have these words thrown around, but the vast majority of people don't really understand what that means. So everything you gave us before gives us a better understanding of that. And now understanding that 4-day rotation, that fact that you can get back to eating those things and eating healthy, but that rotation will make a big difference. Let's talk about the repair part, the fact of what we're going to do to heal that
Well,
GI
and
tract.
definitely we want to look at foods that are harmful. So we want to make sure that we're not bringing those inflammatory foods in. So any excess animal protein from animals, that are being fed corn feed that's heavily sprayed, grains that have antibiotic and hormones and all of that kind of stuff, those animals, their meat is not going to be, it's going to be inflammatory, right? It's going to be more damaging, including the milk from these animals. And so, and you know, when we homogenize milk, all of that destroys some of the nutrients in whole milk anyways. Your processed high fat foods, things like when you know when I talk to people, remind them and I encourage people to go to YouTube and look up, you know, why avoid vegetable oils, because I think it's a really important clip with Dr. Hyman as he talks about what we did to our fat that is man-made and now is causing a lot of damage. So avoiding those fats, sugar, white flour is really important. Your anti-inflammatory foods, all your fruits and vegetables are anti-inflammatory. But if you've had an IgA test done and it comes back that something from the fruit or vegetable is showing up, you're going to want to get rid of those foods for 3 to 4 weeks while you heal and repair your gut, and then bring them back. But remember to do it in a 4-day rotation period. Your cold water fish, your wild caught fish, all important. Almonds, walnuts, seeds. This, you know, some of your seeds like flax seed and pumpkin seed, hemp seed, chia seed, they have a lot of great fiber and they have a lot of good super fats. Olive oil, and remember, olive oil is very sensitive to heat. So you want to make sure that olive oil is used for either low heat cooking or raw. It's so much better raw, but you can use things like avocado oil for high heat, or coconut oil, or ghee. I love ghee. Let me explain to you what ghee is. Ghee comes from a grass-fed animal. It's butter, but it's been boiled down to remove the proteins. So all of the dairy proteins have been removed, and that fat contains what we call butyrate, and butyrate is very healing to the gut. So having some of that for cooking and even putting on your vegetables after they're cooked is a great thing to do.
And this is so I want to make everybody feel a little better too, because I know what the culprits are. And again, it's not always as easy as it sounds to remove these things. I know that I should get rid of all of the processed sugar in my diet. I have not done it. So you have to look at what your pain level is and how much you want to move. And you can start a little bit, and I call it upgrades. I know when I was trying to remove myself off of processed sugar in my family, I took my sugar bowl and I put half sugar, half stevia. And that allowed my taste buds to get used to that difference in taste. And then I slowly started removing the sugar out of it till it was nothing but stevia. So for my family, when, you know, years ago, that was an easy way for us to get slightly off of it. Orange juice, you talked about the insulin. And I remember with orange juice, I mean, I would have every bit of my carbohydrates and sugars I was allowed to have. I would have them first thing in the morning by the size of the glass of orange juice I had, that I would mix with my greens, with my aloe, but it was still too much. And I had to work myself down to just a splash. So don't think you have to, you know, in some cases, start just little bit by little bit making those changes. And I do have to share, I have avocado oil that I cook with. I have the organic Ebu olive oil that I used, extra virgin olive oil that I used when it's cold or low heat. And I was making a salad the other day, a black bean cucumber salad. And the recipe actually is in a Facebook group you and I belong to called Vibrant Living. And that recipe originally had canola oil as its oil in there. And I went to the store the other day to make it, and I grabbed it and I took it off the shelf and I literally bought it, and then I had to go throw it in the garbage because you just kind of go back to what you were. I actually picked up vegetable oil and had to throw it in the garbage and make it with olive oil. So, you know, I've been doing this for 16 years and making these changes, and I still have a hard time with it sometimes. I still make mistakes. So I just want to encourage everybody not to get too hung up with that. There are things, Anne, if we could just finish up with some of the things they can do, probiotics, prebiotics, a technology that might help them heal faster. What are a few little tips you have? Oh, I think I lost Anne. So I'm going to give you a few little tips because I think I lost her here. And those tips are, once you start to heal up the gut, there is a technology that Ann and I discovered a few years ago that is a wearable, affordable technology that actually can help you. These changes usually could take anywhere from 3 to 6 to a year, months to a year, for you to get healed up and to start having the amino acids in your stomach shift and everything to change. And we actually have a technology that we discovered that will actually speed this up to working more from 1 to 3 months to 6 months, just really speed up the healing process within the GI tract. And then getting on probiotics, and then doing prebiotics that can help feed those good bacteria, will help build up that lining again. And can you give us anything else that you'd like to share with that?
Well, I think that, your point, I had a quote that I share a lot with people, and that is that inch by inch, it's a cinch, right? So if you do little steps at a time, and that's what Connie was talking about, right? Yard by yard, it's too hard. If you try to do too much all at once, you're going to give up. So your goal should always be to always work toward creating really good health, and that's really an important piece. And I kind of lost connection for a sec, Connie, so I'm not real sure where I cut out.
It's okay, we picked up and we went on to what we were going to do, and some of the ideas. I talked a little bit about a technology you and I found that anybody can ask questions about. Talked about how to go ahead and start, once you remove things, how do you go about healing the gut.
Awesome. Yeah, and I love the technology. It's been something that I have used with a lot of my clients. It really helps them get to where they want to go. I had one client who had a lot of issues with not, she couldn't give up soda. She was like, I have tried everything. And it had been, I think 5, 6 years, and the physicians were adamant about her giving it up. And I tried one of the patch technologies for her, and that really worked well. Within a month's time, she was off all soda. She could not believe that. And I think the important piece was she went back to see her physician who does her ear checks annually. And he couldn't believe that he didn't have to do the procedure he usually does every year with her because she has so much congestion and swelling in the ear. He said the ear looked really, really good. So you can see the connection between sugar and inflammation, totally connected.
People see it within their from their dentists as well, because if you bring that inflammation down, we're talking inflammation in the whole body. And so whether it's cardiovascular, whether it's in your GI tract, whether it's in your gums and the tissues of your within your mouth, your dentist will notice, your eye doctor will notice. So this is an overall reduction in inflammation. But it starts by you just making the decision to make the changes that you need to make. Start slow, continue on, and ask for support. Get a hold of us, get a hold of whoever shared this with you, and find out how can we support you in getting to what your goal is and getting you healed up, so you're living life and not even thinking. The whole idea should not be that we even think about our bodies, right? If you feel good, you don't think about your gut. The only time you think about your gut or the pain in your knee or anything else that's going on is when it's acting up, and that shouldn't be normal life. Normal life, you shouldn't even be noticing your body.
And we have to realize that the gut is really where all health begins. So it's the most important thing that we can do for our overall health. Absolutely important. Thank you, Connie, so much for doing this and for being part of our discussion. I really enjoyed it.
Thank you, Anne. I appreciate you and for all your wisdom. And we'll get back. We'll do some other videos, maybe break some pieces down, and maybe also get into talking about insulin and insulin resistance, because I think that's another piece that many, many folks struggle with. So thank you, Anne.
All right, we'll see you later.
Bye-bye.
Bye.